If you've been watching my recent RSpec videos, you may notice that I've been really annoyingly requiring a bunch of files in the specs that you're require relative and requiring the model and all that stuff. And you might be thinking that's annoying as heck, why do I have to do that? And depending on what programming language you're used to before Ruby, you might be like, oh, that's normal, right? When I write my JavaScript code, I have to import the function that's exported from the module or the class or the constant or whatever. Maybe you're used to having a lot of these requires, but generally in Ruby, those are kept to a minimum. And generally in RSpec, you'll notice or see things like just that, and gosh, it sure would be nice if that just worked. So I wanted to talk about requiring in your RSpec code and requiring in general and just showing how that would work. So let's copy that shared example. Let's do shared context because there's a little bit more in there. And we'll say RSpec, call it dynamic require. So if we go into RSpec dynamic require and run RSpec, our test passed, so that's great. This is similar to the other code that we have that I just showed. It just has a little bit more, so that's the main difference. But let's make this a little bit better. So let's go in here and let's not have to require the shared behavior group and make that a little bit better. So we run the test. It says could not find shared examples in object with a URL. So what you would do is you would go into your spec helper. I'm going to delete these comments. We've got a lot of comments in here that I have never cleaned out. And, I really would like to clean these out. That'll just make it easier for you. It'll make it easier for me. Everybody's happy. So close, so close. Okay. So what we want to do is that anywhere you require spec helper, we want to make these behaviors available. So what you would do is you would do dir.glob, and I'm going to do this in IRB because that's how I think about things and experiment with things. I think that can help you too, is you open up interactive Ruby and you type in dir. Dir has a method called glob, which we can look at the docs for really quick. Glob takes a pattern, or an array of string patterns, and finds an array with the matching file names. This will help us find all of the Ruby files in specific directories. So we'll look in spec, and let me open up a tree there. So we've got spec, and we've got shared context and shared examples. So let's do spec shared and see what we get. Okay, it finds those directories, but we want Ruby files. So we can do spec shared star, which gets both of those, and then we can do star star RB. That's a glob that will search through any of those nested directories and find any of the Ruby files. And then what you can do is you can take those, and we'll take the first one. You can just call it require. Cannot load it. That's weird. That's surprising. What if we require relative? Nope, sure doesn't like that. Saying we don't have RSpec. Let's require RSpec. I don't even know if you can require RSpec like that. Require RSpec. I had a typo there. Another typo. Okay, so now we can require it relatively. Can we just do regular require? That doesn't work. That's okay. Let's, what if we put dot slash? Oh yeah, we'll do dot slash, and we'll just make it a little more resilient. So that should work. It says it didn't work because it's already been required. So if we do last, that works. So yeah, thanks for bearing with me as I experiment. So yeah, I would just take that, put it here, say dir.glob, each do, f, and we'll say require f. And that requires all of them in our files so that now we can go into user and we don't have to have that require relative. It's loaded into Ruby and already available. So then we can do all this behaves like and clean that code up. So let's go through here and just clean it up. We handled context and examples, so that cleans that up. and it works for both. That cleans that up. I'm running the same spec, which is the wrong spec. Let me run all the specs. So yeah, that's a lot nicer. That's a lot cleaner. Now you could also be thinking like, wow, that's handy, but I'm sick of requiring the model that's under test, right? I'm sick of requiring recipe. Well, you could then go and change this to also require lib and require those files. So you could load all the Ruby files in lib. And here, like, let's get rid of that. Okay, it still works. Pretty nice. Now, there's a cost associated with this, though, which is that for every single test you're running, like even if you're running the ingredient test, and sure, it only needs ingredient and recipe, now user is also being required. And that's one more file that every time we run a test, an RSpec test that uses spec helper, has to load from the disk and have be available within Ruby. And what you'll notice is that as you work on an application, if you go from having 10 Ruby classes to 100 to 1,000, that's going to slow down your test run time. So like for a small trivial example project like this, having dir glob and requiring all the Ruby files is fine. And it's not slow, it's not a big problem. No problem, right? But for a bigger project, this can slow down your tests, and it's something to be aware of. So if you could be strategic about, like, maybe you have a helper that only requires certain things that are needed there that are easy to have, or you could just manually require them. I think however you want to go about that is up to you, but there are pros and cons to it, and it's just something to be aware of. But yeah, we can go into our specs and just clean them up. So get rid of that, run it, it works. So that's how that works. Oh yeah, I just want to get rid of it in user. So that makes our specs quite a lot cleaner. We have less requiring, and everything is available. Hope that explains that. If you've been curious about maybe like in Rails why you don't have to do that in your tests, but you do, but I do in this code when I'm showing it, that's the difference. In Rails, it's already requiring your models and your lib code and everything that's under test as part of initializing the app with the Rails helper. But here we're just using RSpec with plain Ruby and requiring them as needed. Be careful with it, but also make your life a little easier. So it's a fine line to walk. All right. Hope that was helpful. See you next time. Thanks. Bye.